It's about 12 o'clock and you're listening to Triple R. Thank you to Off the Record, wrapping up there before us. Usually you would be hearing press colours with Sam Cummins, but today Triple R is broadcasting live from ACMI at Fed Square with a very special 2 hours celebrating the ACMI exhibition, The Future and Other Fictions. I'm Megan McHugh.
Rob Jan.
Usually we are of 0G on Mondays at 1 p.m, science fiction, fantasy and historical radio. But big thank you to Sam today for giving us his hours for this very special live broadcast. We would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the first peoples of the land on which we meet today. We would also like to acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the room and listening in. Sovereignty has never been ceded. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. This special Triple R live broadcast, thank you so much to everyone who's joining us here in the foyer downstairs near the gift shop. We'll be exploring, discussing and digesting the ACMI exhibition, The Future and Other Fictions, as well as the related events, panels and performances. From cyberpunk megacities and first knowledges to rewilded landscapes and sci-fi renegades, The Future and Other Fictions showcases the people, artworks and ideas that shape tomorrow. It's on until the 27th of April, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily. It's all ages, and you can grab your tickets at ACMI or at acmi.net.au. If you are a Triple R subscriber, show your Triple R subscriber card when you're getting your ticket for a discount.
Megan and I will be with you up to 2 p.m. today on the radio, and we have an amazing lineup of guests joining us here at ACMI to discuss the exhibition, speculative futures and much more. This hour we'll be chatting with Seb Chan, Director and CEO of ACMI, and Amanda Hascard, Lead Curator of the Future and Other Fictions. And later we'll be joined by Adrian Hon, game designer, author and former CEO and founder of Six to Start, to talk about on-screen objects. And we'll round out the broadcast with an interview with Avinash Kumar and Sri Ramamurthy to discuss Elsewhere in India and audio-visual performance envisioning a future world, which is actually happening here tonight at the ACMI at 8 p.m. And you can find tickets for that at the ACMI website. Now, in addition,
Rob and I will share our takeaways from the exhibition, the bits we particularly enjoyed and what it got us pondering. Just a reminder that if you are hearing us in ACMI or out in Fed Square, come and join us down near the gift shop to watch this free live Triple R broadcast. Feel free to pop on by any time up until 2 p.m.
Yes, a reminder that if you're upstairs, you may be seeing us on the video screens as well too. So yeah, that's what we're doing here today. All right, so we've got a soundtrack to start off with, and that would be Wakanda, which is the Black Panther soundtrack by Ludwig Göransson, who gave us The Mandalorian Gloriosity. And the film came out in 2018. It was directed by Ryan Coogler, of course, starring the late and absolutely great Chadwick Boseman as King T'Challa of Wakanda, the eponymous Black Panther. Wakanda forever. Here we are at the ACMI on Saturday. Normally we would be doing 0G on Monday, but today we're doing a special live broadcast from the Future and Other Fictions exhibition. Now, we're starting out with an interview with Seb Chan, ACMI CEO. Hi, Seb.
Hey, how are you?
And Amanda Hascard, who's the ACMI Curator of the Future and Other Fictions. I've just realised your last name rhymes with Asgard.
Ah, there you go.
G'day, Amanda.
Hey, how's it going?
Okay, so I've always found the ACMI a rich vein of science fiction and fantasy genre content. It's very well represented just across the way there in the permanent exhibition space. Yeah. You've got a Mad Max V8 Interceptor base car replica. I actually don't know what the base car is, but whatever. Not a car guy. Costumes from the fantasy movie 3000 Years of Longing, and a crashed flying saucer in the desert model that you can poke your head up into. Yeah. And that's great. So many other things there. And I've seen so many exhibitions here that have had science fiction content. The Tim Burton one, the Stanley Kubrick one. But this is actually the first full-on science fiction one that I've seen. So congratulations, Amanda and Seb, for getting this up.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Now, before we turn to the specifics of the exhibition, it's got a larger content of talks, performances, and even a symposium ongoing. Seb, can you talk to that?
Yeah,
please?
sure. Look, this season, I guess this summer through to Easter, we're all about the future. So we've just finished a three-day symposium for people in the arts and culture space, looking at the future of arts and culture and where that intersects with technology. And I think, over the last three days, we've had some really amazing talks from folks from all around the world coming in, as well as local folks. Really, in the future for me is about how we work together better, and we have agency in technology rather than having technology pushed on to us. And I think that's something that we do well here generally, and I think this place is really about highlighting the people and the human practices that go behind the tools and the craft of screen making. And of course we use technologies as a tool as well. I was generally really positive about the last few days, but also we work in a space. We work in arts and culture where funding and also where Australia's place in arts and culture is also really fragile, and we've seen that play out in some of the discussions around the cancelling of the Australian pavilion at the Venice Biennale. So the future is something that we make live, and it's very important that we support artists and we support the craft of artists, whatever they're doing. And so this place is about imagining those futures, and importantly, I think in this exhibition, which we'll hear about in a second,
Right.
it's really important that people feel that they have visions of the future that they can actually make. It's not a fantasy future. I've just come from an amazing talk about how sci-fi films and the tropes of sci-fi create these fantasy worlds, but actually some of those things are picked up by engineers and technologists that try to make those things into in quotes, a reality. And that's where things go horribly wrong at times if we don't all have agency in that. So it's super important that diversity is carried through.
Right.
And so, I think that's got to play out well for us, but we all have a stake in it. And that's really what this place is about. It's about being accessible, approachable, legible to all of us, all the diversity of people that come in, and this is great that this place is, for the most part, free. It's about giving people a stake in their own futures. And so, that's sort of like sci-fi films, all this stuff, but it's bridging that gap, like people make those things, and I think that's super important. I'm a bit fired up this morning,
Thanks,
a bit of
Ed.
coffee, lots of things going on in the world.
Now, Amanda, the exhibition begins with a comprehensively curated fan cave of science fiction, movie and TV posters, amongst which are nestled screens showing scenes from some of the selections. As you proceed through the rest of the exhibition, it's clear these selections are just a springboard, mostly for a themed exhibition, an exploration that examines the subject of the future from a different perspective than much of that inspirational media that you start out with. So in what way did you intend to make this exhibition stand out from being a traditional survey of science fiction media?
It was really important for myself and the co-curator Liam Young and also Chelsea O'Brien from ACMI that we embraced creative process and makers, and how artists, like Seb said, filmmakers, creatives are using different tools and methods to shape and carve out different kinds of futures on screen. And so for us, it was really, really important to, I guess, break down those hierarchies and some of those structures that you see in traditional forms of speculative and science fiction. So a big part of the show is about ensuring that we are providing examples of not only artworks, but films and, all the different kind of methodologies that different creatives are using in carving out worlds on screen to imagine possible and better futures. And so we've done that by showcasing makers and artists who have written themselves into the story, I guess. So representation is a really big part of the show, in that we are offering different stories and different worlds and different ideas about what the future could be. So Wakanda Forever, for example, is, it's a beautiful imagining of a world on screen that hasn't been touched by colonisation, through to Bjork's The Gate, which looks at, this idea of a post-apocalyptic future on screen that is, in total harmony with the environment and love and nature. So we wanted to acknowledge as curators that these worlds exist on screen through these tropes of science fiction as you come into the gallery, and you've spoken about the fan cave. I love that. I definitely had a major fan moment when I was selecting all of those posters. But what it does is it sort of sets up the conversation for audiences as they enter the show to say, hey, these futures exist. And we've engaged with them often, repeatedly, these ideas of dystopia. And sometimes they paralyse us. But what we've tried to do is shift that script a little bit. And as Seb said, to really encourage and support audiences and communities to acknowledge that we're the ones that kind of shape our tomorrow.
It's very easy to default to dystopia in science
Yes.
fiction because, drama, action, so you've got to have protagonists, and the utopian is a little bit more difficult to portray. But I do like that in the exhibition there is actually quite a utopian strand. For example, it's basically against that old trope of, in an apocalypse or a post-apocalyptic period, you're all going to have to weapon up and be individual, lone sort of warriors. But
That's right.
there's a lot in the exhibition that says to me that you're much better off forming a community, which can then be raided by the warriors.
Absolutely. I think, the power of community, the power of collectivism, the power of us all working together is definitely a major theme in the show. Yeah.
It's very obvious that you're pushing far beyond the usual, Western perspective. And, in a way, there is a colonisation, quite literally, perspective in science fiction.
Yes.
That old trope of only the strong right arm of an Earthman can save these poor aliens. Sometimes that works. Other times it's just totally wrong. And that's what I feel the exhibition is giving to me, pushing well beyond that. Were you weighting one side of the dystopic utopian duality more than another?
No, I don't think we were. I think, myself and my co-curators, we each brought a very different perspective and lived experience. And that's really come out through the curation of the show. For us, the premise of the show and this ACMI show was really about positivity, but in a way that was, like I've said, tangible. So we've acknowledged dystopias in the show. So we talk about Blade Runner and we talk about cyberpunk, and there's a fantastic survey of the genre of cyberpunk on screen that was created by Connor Bateman. So we've acknowledged that these dystopias exist, but even in that space, we looked to artists and makers who are using those tools as a power, to shift the power and to resist against these very kind of stark ideas of dystopia. So for us, we didn't want to present, everything's going to be okay in the future. It's really about showcasing the craft of storytelling and acknowledging that the future is really, there's different possibilities. So we steered away from dystopia, but we very much acknowledged its existence.
It's pretty hard not to.
That's right, yeah.
I was saying the other day on Zero G that if you don't acknowledge climate change in your future story, then you're irrelevant and inaccurate as well.
That's right, yeah. And I guess, for me as a First Nations person, I think about, and most First Nations people think about the apocalypse starting when colonisation happened. So we're not suggesting that in this show that these sort of apocalyptic dystopian ideas don't exist. For some people they exist now. But what we're trying to do is present different ideas about what the future can be, and that it's that agency piece that Seb was saying, that we all have the power and potentially the tools to resist these ideas and shape the future.
Yeah, I think,
as they said on Star Trek, resistance is not futile.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think, I think it is people need hope, but people need hope and practices. And, hope on its own is not enough. We've seen that play out. And I think people need examples and practices, and we get that through fiction, we get that through creative work,
Yeah.
but we also don't see a lot of it. You know, and I think as you've kind of pointed out, what we do see tends to be pretty rote, and we like that because it's familiar. And a museum, a public space, a public museum needs to actually develop a curiosity, people's curiosity about the world and a curiosity about each other. And that's when good arts and culture works and helps to bring us together and give us the tools to work together. You know, I think, you know, we're in a time where we're in little social media bubbles and all sorts of things. It's very easy to polarise people. It's not about polarisation, it's about giving people tools to work together and tools to eat together, share a drink together, listen to radio together, you know.
There's a lot of First Nations content in the exhibition, and I mean international First Nations. One in particular, Afrofuturism, of course, which is flavour of the month in the music world, and justly so. It's very interesting there because we've got an extensive sort of Wakanda section, and it's very much the idea that Wakanda and the Black Panther were actually created by comic book artist and writer maestro Jack Kirby, who's a white American living in New York City. And his idea of Wakanda and the Black Panther's culture, it's very much an advanced lost world African kingdom, which would have been sort of prevalent in literature in the 20th century and before that. And so he's working in the 1960s. But later on, they've expanded that with Black Panther in the movies and other comic books to be informed by Black Americans, working closely with African inspirations. So, you know, they've got culturally informed artists and sources. Amanda, were you keen to get more actual international First Nations content in the exhibition?
I guess for me as the curator and my co-curators, it was really important that we were having a transcultural or transnational conversation when it comes to these ideas of sovereignty and futures. And, you know, First Nations people, we think about the past, the present and the future all encapsulated in one kind of thing. So it was really important that we surveyed a multiplicity of futures and a multiplicity of stories. So the show is deeply embedded locally in those stories and those First Nation stories, but we expanded that to really look at, I guess, the solidarity and the kind of experience that's happening on the global stage as well.
Right. Okay, well, we're going to go to a track from More Mother, and that is a track called Mzansi, and Seb selected this, and we'll get to that later after we've played the track. It's Mzansi by More Mother, better known by her other name. Well, actually, that's the stage name. The other name is Kamei Aewa, American poet, musician, and activist from Pennsylvania. And that track was selected for us today by the CEO of ACMI, Seb. Hi, Seb.
Yeah, hey, how are you?
Can you tell me why you selected that particular track? And we're going to play another one after the interview, which is called Pop Will Eat Itself, X, Y and Z Sensory. The band is Pop Will Eat Itself. So why did you select those two tracks?
Look, I think, More Mother's super interesting, straight out of Philly, and, being sort of a music person myself, having done really music stuff before my museum work. More Mother's been doing really interesting work in the Afrofuturism space. Her Black Quantum Futurism, which is part of her other wider visual arts practice. She's working across mediums. She's working in music and sound and spoken word. She's collaborating with lots of artists and other musicians. Mary Lattimore's playing harp on that track. And I think there's sort of this interesting moving back and forwards, and it's one of those things that I find very exciting about where music is heading now, is that there's a lot of, it's going beyond remix, and there's a lot of mixing of styles and genres. And for me, growing up in the 90s, as sort of a Gen Xer, which sort of speaks to the next track, is this sort of sense that the futures that I was promised are different to the futures that kids now are able to see imagined. And it's super important that I think people like More Mother are connecting, 60s spiritual jazz practices to a larger civil rights movement and other practices in music and sound with contemporary production and contemporary performance. And her video clips and music videos are great. You know, there's sort of this cross kind of disciplinary practice that as a museum of screen culture, I would hope we were all interested in, but I think sometimes for me, running this place, which is so much about screen and the stuff you see with your eyes, I'm also about the body and about stuff you feel, right? So I'm really about bass and about other sensory things, and I think that's kind of the other thing. So pop will eat itself, British group out of the late 80s, early 90s, and they had this track X, Y, and Z, and this particular remix has a really nice Balearic kind of vibe to it. It's one of those things that I've always felt you could make a beautiful edit to drop in sunrise kind of set, but all its lyrics are sort of speaking to that kind of issues that we talk about now, the oxygen factories, synthetic trees. It's all got this sort of, it's kind of cute. So anyway, it's sort of track I grew up with it, when I was in my early 20s. It was kind of nice, and sort of one I feel like I should remix it sometime when I'm not doing my museum job.
Yeah. Well, look, I think the exhibition is excellent from a science fiction point of view because it goes further than the usual sort of survey.
Yeah, it should, right?
Yeah.
Museum exhibitions should push you. They shouldn't be they shouldn't just be things that you see the things you already know. If we're just doing that, public culture's dead, We need to be exciting people about different things and making people comfortable with difference and curious about the world, talking with each other, getting out of their little and kind of antagonistic bubbles. It's really important. Music's good at that. Museums should be good at that too.
But come on, Seb. I mean, I for one have flown an antagonistic transparent bubble. And as long as it's got enough equipment on it.
That's true. That's what video games are for, right?
And look, I love that the ACMI is not snobby about what the screen is. It could be a phone screen, it could be a video screen, anything. That must be a real challenge trying to open it up to.
No, it's exciting. It's super exciting. It's not about being snobby at all. Arts institutions, they're for everybody.
Yeah. Maybe that's because cinema is such a young art, comparatively speaking.
Yeah.
So it's always looking to the future.
Yeah,
anyway.
for me, video games too. Like the next big exhibition we've got.
Yeah.
It's about video game world design.
Oh, really?
It's going to be absolutely killer. And again, it's the thing. Like
Yeah.
your kids are playing it. It's great. All that stuff.
Well, all right. People should get down to the ACMI and see the exhibition because we're actually sitting above it, the space right now. And
So
I can feel the science fiction vibe getting up there as well.
We're actually floating above railway tracks, the infrastructure of the 19th century. We're on a rubber mat. So this is all, it's amazing. Right?
It's a lot better than the old brick gas and fuel building that used to be here, that's for sure. All right, well, we've got another track coming up, and thank you both for talking to us today.
Thank you so much. We've been chatting with Seb Chan and Amanda Hascard. Head down to the Future and Other Fictions at ACMI. It's on till April 27th, so heaps of time to head down. If you're a Triple R subscriber, you can show your subscriber card to get a discount. We're going to head out of that interview with classic track from Vangelis from the Blade Runner soundtrack. This is Love Theme. You are listening to a special Triple R live broadcast from ACMI, the ground floor foyer right near the gift shop. We're doing this special broadcast as part of the Future and Beyond weekend happening to celebrate the exhibition The Future and Other Fictions. I'm Megan McHugh.
And Rob Jan.
And the track you just heard then was Vangelis, of course, from the Blade Runner soundtrack with Love Theme. If you are listening to us throughout the ACMI building or even in the nearby surrounds of Fed Square, feel free to head down near the gift shop and you can watch this live broadcast. Give us a wave. We always appreciate. Thank you so much to everyone down here watching us currently as well.
No, they have to wave properly.
We just spoke to Amanda and Seb from ACMI about the exhibition and all things that ACMI is doing at the moment in the current, present and into the future. And I thought we would just have a bit of a chat about our experience of the exhibition. We've both been along. Rob, you've been a couple of times.
I have.
And I think one of the things that stuck out to us was just the amount of tangible things in the exhibition. So not just looking at things behind glass. It's so much more than that.
Well, it's about the moving image, and obviously all of those things are captured with a camera generally. So the first interactive, what did you call it? Actions? Activation.
Activation. Oh, yes, I taught Rob a new term, activation.
Of the activations. Usually it's much more sinister when I say activate. Well, the thing is that you are the camera. They've got a set of Weta Workshop bigatures, which are large miniatures from Blade Runner 2049. So it's a cityscape. So you can actually walk around that and hum the Vangelis theme
Yes, exactly.
as you do it. And also look through little sites that are equivalent to looking through the camera lens.
Yeah, I thought that was really amazing that you are to see it the way it's captured by camera and then portrayed on screen later. And I mean, as Amanda was saying before, I just gestured to her empty chair, but as she was saying before, it's very much about the creative process and how these things come from an idea into reality and then captured and then put on screen for us to view. And really seeing those bigatures kind of hammers at home. There's so much artistry, work and care that goes into that, and then how it ends up looking for us when it's mass produced on screen. It's just amazing to kind of see a little bit behind the scenes of that process.
Well, it's the iceberg, isn't it? You're looking at it, you're only seeing that piece that's there. And there is a lot of that. It's very holistic. You do get with the Björk, the Gate music video, you actually have the costume sketches, the design process, the through to the actual costumes. And I love that. Give me some costumes to look at.
I was going to say, I think the big draw card for you is probably that there's quite a bit of costume element to this exhibition.
The sets, there's a handheld prop from Gareth Edwards, the creator. So that's another Weta Workshop thing. Just a little handheld data device with chips that go into it for missions and all sorts of things. I love that kind of thing. And another couple of the activations, one is that you create your own movie poster. So you basically go in there and you've got a light table with a bunch of cells on it that you can see through. You overlay it, then you digitise it, and then they throw it up onto the moving wall. So that's fun.
You become part of the exhibition, and then kind of you leave your mark, and then people who come through later can see that. And I don't want to get too in the weeds here, but it's sort of like, the exhibit encourages to think about making our own future and a call to action, what role we can play. And this is just one small way you can make your mark on the exhibition itself and start thinking about the kind of futures we want to make. I think something simple as making a poster, which is really fun and hands-on, it is part of that whole thought process, I think, that the exhibition is really trying to get us to. There's another activation as well, which you can also just do online, which is a bit of a text-based. We've got the promo here behind us, but it's a text-based adventure, sort of choose your own adventure game. And you went through that, Rob, didn't you?
I did. And basically you're a filmmaker, a budding filmmaker, although you've actually got one film in the can before this, and you answer prompts and create your own movie pitch, essentially. And I ended up with a science fiction film set in a climate changed world where everyone lives underground. And I called the film Down Under. And Robert Downey Jr., Down Under, plays a telepathic engineer who, along with his daughter, undertakes a subterranean journey to repair a geothermal generator, only to find out it's been infiltrated by sentient AI military drones. So,
oh, not that again.
ripped from today and tomorrow's headlines. It was fun, actually.
And I think that's kind of a theme at ACMI as well, is there's a lot of hands-on things, a lot of activations, ways for you to get involved and become part of the exhibit or take it a bit further afterwards as well. And I think that's one of the draw cards of coming to showcases and exhibitions here.
And not just the exhibition. I mean, the exhibition could take you, if you took your time and absorbed all there is to see in it, it would take you over an hour, I reckon.
Yeah. Because there's...
To our expert eyes, we can just...
Just it gets absorbed.
Yeah. But once you do that, or before, also check out the upstairs permanent exhibition, which has got so much in it that's genre content, science fiction and fantasy, and some historical stuff too. In fact, there's a lot of historical stuff. But one of the things that caught my eye was the array of prosthetic makeup that they've got, showing you how they make a rubber face mask or a silicone one.
Yeah.
And also big sets, little sets, from Adam Elliott's Memoirs of a Snail.
Yeah, Memoir of a Snail.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just kind of hammers home as well. I think often we we see the final product and we say, okay, that was the final product, but we forget, there's hours of care and time and lots of people and passion that go into making these things.
Yeah.
And I think exhibits like this, and you can see bits of props or from behind the scenes, it really just reminds you that there's so many people, hands and love that goes into creating these worlds and from scratch a lot of the time, and also continuing on ideas or getting you to think about certain futures as well, that it's not just, it doesn't appear from nowhere. There's a lot of effort that goes into it.
No. In fact, one of the items downstairs I thought was particularly interesting from my perspective. There's a full spread of costumes from the Black Panther. So, you've got T'Challa in there and Okoye, I think, and Queen Ramonda. Mm-hmm. Yep. So it's great to be able to actually get relatively close to those costumes and see the detail on them, which is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, with the respectful distance, just, seeing the craftsmanship that goes into it. Little details that, you might not notice on screen.
They're made of vibranium. There's nothing that can happen to... Well, actually, yeah. But then they've got comic book covers, Jack Kirby's original artwork for the Black Panther character, which is not so great, and I'm glad they changed the costume. And then later on, they've got other graphic novels and so on. But they've also got artwork from the Art of Marvel movies. They have these big coffee table books that they put out.
Yeah.
And it's nice because I look at those printed up big on the wall and I go, oh, I've got that one.
I think it's good too because you can see the different influences, especially in the costuming from Black Panther, looking to sort of African influences and also other things that they were considering in terms of the colour and fabric choice and what it's saying about a particular character. So, for example, Angela Bassett's character, it made it very clear that she was queen and that this was a very royal outfit, and just the amount of thought that goes into the world building from all sides, including costumes, props, sets.
Do you know the funny thing? Whenever people see costumes, they always go, gee, they didn't look that small on the 40-foot screen.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess it's crazy to think people, you have to probably have a full fitting team of people stitching them into these items.
Well, each of those costumes, I don't know if those are hero costumes. I mean, they're superhero costumes. Whether or not they're the main one used on screen, or they could be stunt costumes or any number, because there's like 12 of them or so.
Yeah, they need versions in case someone spills a jam donut or something.
The only thing lacking in the exhibition is it doesn't contain enough Stark content. Oh, well.
That's your complaint about most things,
I always want more iron in my diet, more Iron Man. I also like the Australian First Nations video at the end of the exhibition, which is just an amazing piece and really gets you into the story. And it's set in a climate change after, when the climate change lands even more than it has done now. And there's like this sort of, I shouldn't give a spoiler, should I? But there's a reaction to that. And at one stage they're lofting almost like seed pods of culture into space in capsules. And what I actually liked about that is that they're using a rotary launcher, which is a really odd concept, where you put a capsule into a machine that basically swings it round very, very fast and throws it into orbit. What a great concept.
Like a catapult type.
Well, I'm actually kind of thinking of the First Nations artefact, the bull roarer, which is used for signalling. And it's kind of like that. And I thought, there's just this wonderful symmetry there.
Yeah. I mean, I think as well for looking at different ways you can interact with futurism, I think there's something for everyone in the exhibit as well. I think what resonated with me a lot was the section with the bigatures that was on kind of Blade Runner 2049 and the kind of world that builds and being able to see those bigatures in person. Which section kind of resonated with you?
Well, actually, I found it was very good at sustaining the resonance as I went through it.
A constant echo of interest.
Well, there are a lot of commissioned pieces in the exhibition, which is interesting because these audio-visual displays that they've got, films, let's call them short films, they will someday be collected by the ACMI and perhaps will serve as the springboards for future exhibitions. So it's actually quite live. That they're pushing the future forwards themselves, and I kind of like that. It's not just distant.
Yeah, yeah, agree.
So I like the gaming elements in there, and the Björk music video in itself
Yeah.
was great too. So you're wandering through there, and you're constantly, you know how the thing, if you walk into a room, if there's a screen, it automatically draws your attention.
Yeah.
They managed to set that out so that you weren't dominated by that all the time.
Yeah.
You would naturally go through and go, this is how you do this and make this, and it's educational, to use that dreaded word. But you go through it and you actually learn quite a bit from that.
Yeah.
If you take the time to do that and don't just museum shuffle through it, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I think the screens really kind of emphasize the worlds that you're seeing broken down in front of you. So often you'll see the artifacts or descriptions or props or costumes, and then it does have kind of, like I said, the final product, not to overuse that term, on the screen. So you can be like, oh, I understand how we've gone from A to Z here and what the world ended up looking like at the end of it all.
And it's funny because you can do this on a DVD commentary. Obviously, you can have your
I
split.
miss those.
Or you can do it in the DVD extras.
I miss those too.
But it's actually, you don't get it on streaming sometimes.
No,
sometimes.
I think they sometimes do like YouTube behind the scenes. It's never the same thing.
But here you actually can get it encapsulated in front of you. And you can do something that you can't do with a DVD unless it's a 3D one or a streamer. You can actually walk around it.
Yeah, see it from all sides.
And I love sitting in, listening to one of the music videos, and I can get a bleed through of Björk from the other side of the next thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is raw. I'm actually here curating my own experience.
And you can linger, like you mentioned, the kind of commission video packages as well. Some of them are designed to work well in a loop too. So I think, there's plenty of opportunities to sit and absorb, and then other opportunities to be more active and interactive with it.
Yeah, I thought this exhibition was extremely well paced in terms of that. Like, the exhibition space is below us where we're sitting now, and it's laid out in a sort of a meandering river type pattern with the space that they're using. And I felt I did actually get the flow of the whole thing running through.
Yeah, it's very well thought out, for sure.
Well, we've got some more tracks to play.
Yes, we are here at ACMI doing a live broadcast for Triple R. We'll be here until 2 p.m. today, and we'll be speaking to more guests later on. Thank you to everyone who's joined us here in the foyer listening along. And yes, we're going to go to another track, one of the ones that Seb had selected.
And this will be a group called Pop Will Eat Itself. X, Y and Z for 0G. Sensory Amplification Mix.
Track we just heard there was Pop Will Eat Itself, X, Y and Z, Sensory Amplification Mix. We are nudging up to 1 p.m, so welcome to the second hour of a very special Triple R live broadcast from ACMI in Fed Square. I'm Megan McHugh.
And Rob Jan.
You usually catch us on Mondays at 1 p.m. on 0G, but today we are broadcasting live from near the gift shop. So if you are in the surrounds of ACMI or out in Fed Square, feel free to come on down and watch us up until 2 p.m. We are here.
As some of the 0G audience have come in today, and thank you for attending.
We appreciate the support. We are, of course, here to celebrate the exhibition The Future and Other Fictions, which is on at ACMI right now until the 27th of April. It's on daily 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. You can get your tickets here in person or at acme.net.au. If you are a Triple R subscriber, you can show your subscriber card for a discounted ticket. As part of the Future and Beyond Mini Festival this weekend, there are also panel talks, events and film screenings to enjoy. You can check out acme.net.au for information on what's happening at ACMI over the weekend. Tomorrow we will also have some Triple R DJs playing here at ACMI. We have Yasmin Sharif from Cease and Desist and Anthony Carew from the International Pop Underground. Last hour we spoke with Seb Chan, who is Director and CEO of ACMI. and also Amanda Hascard, lead curator of The Future and Other Fictions. Coming up this hour, we'll be speaking to audio-visual performance duo Mertovik and Thurida. But first up now, we're here with Adrian Hon. He is the game designer behind the incredibly popular narrative fitness app Zombies Run and the techno-thriller Daily Step app, what a combo, called The Walk, as well as the author of several books, including You've Been Played, How Corporations, Governments and Schools Use Games to Control Us. That one examines nefarious uses of gamification, and he's also the author of A History of the Future in 100 Objects, an alternate history science fiction novel. If that's not enough, he's also lived alternate realities as a neuroscientist, experimental psychologist, TED talker, and viral tweet author. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you.
Hi, Adrian.
So you just wrapped your talk here at ACMI, and it was titled The Future History of the World in 7 On-Screen Objects, which provided a tour through 7 iconic objects from speculative screen worlds in movies, anime and games. Can you give us a bit of a sneak peek into what you spoke about? What were these 7 objects and how did you choose them?
Yeah, I mean, I was interested in, how movies, TV and games can explore the future, different ideas of where we are now, what we're afraid of, what we're excited about. So the first one was from a game called Death Stranding, and that's set in a kind of post-apocalyptic world where the USA has sort of been split apart. And like in a lot of science fiction, when you're playing the game, you have this exoskeleton on, like a robot exoskeleton, a bit like Iron Man.
Always.
Always.
There's
always.
your Iron Man.
You know this. But in this game, you're not using it to go and shoot baddies for the most part or fly around. You're using it to just deliver packages. That's your job in this game. You're just a delivery man, basically.
Yeah.
And so, it's just a fascinating kind of view of the future where it's like the most important thing you'll be doing is just delivering supplies and bringing people together. So, that was one I started with. Another one was the movie Minority Report. So one of my favorite Spielberg movies. And there's a lot of futuristic stuff in that movie. But one of the things he wanted to do was think about what do computers look like in the future. And this was before the iPhone. And so Tom Cruise, when he's trying to figure out who the murderer is in some pre-crime case, he's waving his arms around the air.
Ah, yes.
With the music on, with the symphony on. And when people watch this, they were like, wow, this is the future. It looks so intuitive. All computers are going to be us just moving our hands around. And that didn't happen. And the reason why it didn't happen is because it's really tiring, to just keep your hands held up all the time.
Yeah.
But there's a bit of truth in that, obviously iPhones, and smartphones all use touchscreens.
Yeah.
And when the iPhone first came out, people thought, this is a bad idea, getting rid of the keyboard. We can type fast on a real keyboard. But if we use touchscreens, then we can have something different. So those two just kind of showing how things sometimes don't happen in the way that we think they will.
Yeah, nice.
That's 2.
I could keep going, but yeah.
What were some that didn't quite make the top 7 cut that you would like? If you had an expanded talk, what else would make an appearance?
One of my favorite movies is Her, the Spike Jonze movie, which is almost 10 years now, I think. And, that's very topical because it's about artificial intelligence. And, when it first came out, I think a lot of people in Silicon Valley were a bit mad at it because they're like, that's not realistic. Yeah. How would a man fall in love with artificial intelligence? That's not how it works. And now, of course, this is a real thing in some ways. But the movie has aged really well, actually, because it's not so much about would you want to romance a robot. It's more about how people connect to each other. And so I probably would have put that one in. I don't know why I didn't think of that. Maybe, yeah.
And here we have Scarlett Johansson now actually right at the moment embroiled in a controversy where her image is being used by AI to put words into her mouth.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of a pretty disturbing version of that. Yeah.
Do you think that, I loathe to bring it up, but do you think sort of COVID and the way things shifted there and how we interact with technology and, what you were saying about sources of connection and things,
yes.
What role do you think that's played in maybe depictions of the future or how attitudes towards technology might have shifted?
During COVID, I was running a games company during COVID, and people couldn't go to the gym anymore. So that was good, I suppose, for game developers, and that now people have to play video games instead of going out. And what a lot of people said was COVID and lockdown supercharged a lot of the changes that were already happening with Zoom meetings and with like ordering online. But then it turned out, and so everyone kind of like thought, wow, that means that like we're all going to be completely online by 2030. And it turned out that it was almost like, no, this is too much actually for a lot of people. This is more internet than we want. And we're seeing a bit of a like reversion to maybe we do want to go and be together. Now, sometimes that ends up being a bit retrograde. So, for example, people say, "Oh, you're not allowed to work from home anymore. That's terrible." I think work from home is good, but on the other hand, a lot of people spending time in just watching TV or TikTok or video games, they will say, I don't feel good about this. And like maybe there's something else I should be doing. And so that's kind of a place where we saw the future speed up almost just in a couple of years.
I'm reminded of the gaming sitcom Mythic Quest when you're talking about that, about the pandemic pushing gaming forwards for a lot of people. And then afterwards, all of the people who weren't real gamers sort of ebbed away.
Yes, there's been a bit of a hangover.
You're a neuroscientist and experimental psychologist as well. And speaking of games, I really hope you're putting your psychological expertise to good purposes rather than just using it to manipulate gamers.
The funny thing is a lot of game designers love to say, like we can use behavioral science and ideas from experimental psychology to make games more money, to sort of make them more addictive. And I would always tell them, look, if it was that simple, all my professors at university would be millionaires, and they're not. It's weirdly harder and easier than it looks. It's a weird situation with games because I think individual gamers will go and say, maybe I shouldn't be spending like 100 hours playing Civilization or like Fortnite or whatever. Like that seems a bit too much. But like collectively, I think gamers are quite reluctant to admit that maybe there's a sort of downside to the hobby. And so where I sit is, I do think that actually a lot of companies, and not just games companies, but just technology companies, are using behavioral tricks to try and, what they call increase engagement, increase retention, and keep people playing and paying.
Sorry, I just got to collect a loot crate there.
Add credit card details here.
if you play Duolingo, you know what this looks like.
I am obsessed with Duolingo's marketing right now, but we do not have time to go into that. I think this is kind of a good segue. I wanted to talk a bit about gamification for motivation and manipulation. It is a powerful tool and it's being used today, and you cover a lot about this topic in your book, You've Been Played, how corporations, governments and schools use games to control us all. What are some examples, do you think, of gamification being used for good?
Yeah, I mean, if there's something that you really want to do that you find hard, that's kind of chore or tedious, like, learning a musical instrument or just, doing your chores or whatever, then gamification can be a good way to get yourself into a habit, right? I think the important thing is it's something that you want to do, right? And it's something where there's kind of like a limit, right? So, something like Peloton, right? The sort of exercise bike, that could be good, like the gamification it uses if it gives you motivation. But the problem is Peloton kind of doesn't really have a limit. And so you do hear about people who are so fixated on rising the leaderboard that they kind of hurt themselves, right? Because they're just like, well, I just need to get to the top, or I can't break my streak. And it's like, that's not good, know? So there's good parts of it and there's bad parts of it, and it's hard to sort of disentangle the two.
I have heard some people say that they deliberately break a streak on things like a fitness app just to make sure that, with their own psychology, they're not doing it for the wrong reasons or their motivations.
That's a really good. Yeah, it's just good to remind yourself, look, it's not actually about the streak.
Yeah.
It's about what it's doing for you,
And I guess just to pare it back a bit, I mean, when we say gamification, what kind of things do we mean in that? It's used a lot in fitness and things, but
it's basically using ideas from game design for non-game purposes. So if you see points or badges or achievements or quests on, airline loyalty programs, or when you're using Duolingo or things like that. In schools now, a lot of schools and universities use gamification to track students.
Yeah.
That's gamification.
You could do it in workplaces.
They do it a lot in workplaces. That's not great. I don't like that. Like Amazon uses gamification a lot. It's built into Microsoft, Office. It's built into a lot of tools, and so it's kind of a bit inescapable.
But I mean, they use often, I don't know, in particular cases, sometimes they're using it in what I would call an evil sense.
Yeah.
But it could be like level up, and here's a fish cake, or a fish biscuit, or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, schools have used very basic forms of gamification for a long time. In the UK, if you do something good, then you put a marble in the jar and you fill the jar. You get, that's fine.
Yeah.
The issue is when it becomes automated and it becomes really fine-grained.
Yeah.
So there's this software called Class Dojo. It's really popular US, UK, around the world. And basically it lets teachers award points for paying attention or not going to the toilet, all these things. And they can be traded in. And the kids just get really anxious about not having enough points.
It becomes less of a reward system from a person and more of something from the void.
Yes.
I think this is super interesting, but we're going to take a quick mid-interview song break, and we're going to hear a track from the film The Creator. This one's composed by Hans Zimmer, and it's called They're Not People, and we'll be back with Adrian Hon after this. We're here chatting with Adrian Hon. He's a game designer and author, and he's here in Melbourne at ACMI for a variety of different things, but notably, Adrian, you also did a keynote for the Future of Arts, Culture and Technology Symposium, or FACT 2025, which ran over the previous week, over the last couple of days. Your talk in particular was titled The Age of Immersion, and it was on immersive entertainment experiences. As a big fan of Sleep No More in New York City, I'm keen to hear your thoughts, but for those unfamiliar, what do we mean when we say an immersive experience? What does that mean to us today?
I mean, that's a good question, because people kind of think of different things. I mean, in a technological point of view, it's like virtual reality, it's like IMAX, it's like things that try and transport you using your senses, massive screens or wraparound screens. But it's like a feeling, right? So people will go and say, I'm immersed in this book, or I'm playing Dungeons and Dragons and I'm immersed. And so the way I look at it is it's imaginative transport to another place. And that can be something like amazing illusion, or can just be reading a book.
What do you think are some of your favourite uses of immersion that have particularly worked in your perspective?
Well, I mean, I love a good movie. I love seeing Avatar in 3D. I mean, the story is pretty predictable, but as a spectacle, it's incredible. Immersive theatre. Obviously, the first time I went to a Punch Drunk show, this is one where you can explore a massive building, and there are actors all around you. It's been completely transformed. The first time I went to that, I felt like I was walking inside a video game. Such a strange feeling.
Computer end program.
I know, exactly. It's like the holodeck. And so those are things that I found and theme parks as well, I suppose, I find really interesting.
What about laser tag games and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, those give you a lot more to do, right? And I think that there's an argument, I suppose, for calling sports and games, immersive. There are laser tag games where you play it in science fiction surroundings, and so that now you are literally the hero in this little adventure.
I mean that's a kind of nice bridge into your work on Zombies Run, which I mean when you were sort of coming up with the seed of that idea, you worked on that with Naomi Alderton as well, the author. And when you came up with the seed for that idea, did you think that it would be a catch-on as much as it did and appeal in such a broad way?
No, is the short answer. I mean, it came up because I was getting into running, and I was running is really boring. I'm sorry, whatever all the Nike adverts tell you, it's just boring and painful. Yeah. And I thought it would be really cool if we gave you this kind of fictional reason to be running. Why do we run in real life? It's to exercise. But if there's a zombie apocalypse, obviously you're running away from zombies, but you would be running to deliver supplies or to send a message or to rescue survivors. And, it's role play in a way. We're putting you in the shoes of another character, and we're doing that through audio storytelling, as you're running. And so the funny thing is, when we announced it, people just like immediately understood it. They're like,
Yeah.
I get it. Even just from the name, Zombies Run. Oh yeah, I can run away from zombies. I thought we would make it for like 1 or 2 years, and then we just go and make something else.
Yeah.
And then it just kept on going because people just told us this is the only way I can exercise, and it was a so it becomes a really rewarding thing to do, as a game designer, because like on the one hand it's fun to make stuff that entertains people, but when you get people saying this is literally changed my life physically and helped me recover from cancer or whatever, then you're like, I gotta keep on making this, I suppose.
Yeah.
And who knows, someday, well, cardio is important.
Cardio, yes, crucial.
Yes.
How do you, what is the secret to kind of successfully mixing narrative, gamification, and the physical world, which seems a bit of a theme with a couple of your projects?
I really like doing it. It's hard to do. Like, there's not a lot,
Yeah.
of things that have done it well. You kind of need this like mixture of magic and like literalism in the sense of like I think people are kind of drawn to it because it's sort of like you're enchanting the real world. It's a bit like Narnia. Like, oh, what if we could just go through this portal and we're in a different place?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can't ask too much of people.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I played some of these like location-based games where it says, oh, if you want to go and collect this treasure, go down this street. And I'm like, I don't want to run down that street. Actually,
Yeah.
it's kind of dodgy street. Pokemon has been able to do this.
Yeah.
But only Pokemon.
Yeah.
Like no one else has really been able to crack it. So.
Which is in the news at the moment. Pokemon, right this very day, gangs of thieves have been breaking into card game shops and
true.
stealing Pokemon.
As a Pokemon fan, it's
It's a whole
but
thing.
I think you're right, and I think part of what Niantic did was they were able to map a lot of environments by getting people to go and be feet on the ground.
Yes.
Catching Pokemon and also mapping, providing GPS data points.
Yeah, Pokemon Go is perfect because that's literally what you do in the story. Like in the
Yeah.
video games, you travel around the world collecting Pokemon and having battles. And when people try to do it for like Jurassic Park, it's like, yeah, but like in the movies, they don't like wander around cities like collecting, dinosaurs. That's
Too much of a leap.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Just sort of as one of our last questions, as we're sadly running close to time, what do you think are some of the future possibilities of gaming as a medium? Like, how would you like to see it evolve?
Well, I mean, one of the issues that the games industry is running into is that the budgets keep on going up and up,
Yeah.
right? I think the rumored budget for Grand Theft Auto 6 is like $700 million. I mean,
Wow.
it's more than like any movie.
Yeah.
And that's, that's high, but there's a lot of games now with budgets in the 9 figures.
Yeah.
And so we've got to get away from that. It's just not sustainable. The best movies are not necessarily the ones with the best computer graphics, but we can make things that use your imagination more.
Yeah.
Smaller games. I mean, Melbourne, Australia is fantastic for that sort of thing. And so, just being a bit more imaginative, it means you can also tell smaller stories, that maybe are relevant to different people.
Yeah. No, fantastic. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us. This was our chat with Adrian Hon. He's in Melbourne for a series of events across ACMI. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to head out of that interview with another track, and this one is Heroes. It's the Janelle Monáe cover of David Bowie's classic. And we are broadcasting live from the ACMI foyer, right next to the gift shop, where I can actually see Adrian's book, You've Been Played, how corporations, governments and schools use games to control us all. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, head over to the gift shop and grab a copy of that. Thank you so much.
Okay, now we're here at the ACMI. We're going to do an interview with Avinash Kumar and Sri Rama Murthy to discuss Elsewhere in India, which is an audio-visual performance. It's here at the ACMI tonight at 8 p.m. And you can get tickets for that on the ACMI website if you wish. So, all right, guys, I've seen this idea of having a rounded video performance, and it says it's immersive and it's everything. Can you give us an idea of exactly how many pieces of art you've got in this? Have you got dance, film, everything?
Well, so Elsewhere in India is an audiovisual live cinema experience that's looking at India in the year 2079. And Murthy is a music producer and DJ. I'm a visual artist and VJ. And together we basically piece together fragments of various types of media. And the story is also based on this idea of cultural amnesia in India, and the two characters and a third, the main protagonist who we're sidekicks for, is a cultural cyborg called Meenakshi.
Yeah.
And the three of them are essentially spending time in 2079 trying to piece together fragments of Indian multicultural heritage. And so with this idea of fragments is also the reason for choosing multiple types of mediums. So we have like Unreal Game Engine, we have generative AI visuals, we have archives from a dancer that we work with from the 1980s, and there's like we're also working with archives from the British Film Institute, from colonial India, and so it's just like a mishmash of many things, and that's part of the story as well.
Science fiction in India, I feel, is often neglected in the West, but it's a remarkably large film. There's not only cinema, there's literature, the word, and I'll try on this, but I'm not too good on this one. Sanjarat Ray. Do you know his work? He's
Satyajit Ray.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, he's the original E.T. with Steven Spielberg ripped off him.
The Alien.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah,
exactly.
never actually made, but
Yeah.
yeah, awesome. So with the performance, you're focusing in upon artifacts from the past. How did you go about selecting those?
Okay. Nice to be here. Thanks for talking to us. Artifacts from the past sort of lay down the foundation for us to explore and speculate futures of India, and also sort of stay rooted in our own ways of life, cultural perspective. Museums and other old custodians of old forms of art and artisans were immediate choice. Not only to just focus on the intricate and complex beauty in those art forms, which are many ways diminishing in the current times, and it was a good way to look at an artistic expression like us and focus on those.
Right. Yeah. So I have to ask, what's it like being the sidekick of a cyborg?
It's great. Actually, the cyborg is based on my... so the third collaborator in the cultural cyborg is based on a real person. Her name is Jayalakshmi Ishwar. She's a veteran Indian classical dancer. She also happens to be my mother. And so Murthy and me have been working with her for many years now. And she's basically been dancing for like 50 years. She's very senior and very well known as well. She's written books and so on and so forth. So so the cyborg is a manifestation of her in some sense, but importantly her as someone who holds the past and the future in one sweep together. And that's kind of the inspiration as well for the story. And through the cultural cyborg, we basically explore, because cyborgs are in some sense more, let's say, empty vessels, so to speak. And so we thought that would be a good choice for a place that has cultural amnesia, to have a cyborg that fills it up with warmth and meaning. And then the idea is also that the cyborg has basically been machine learned. Her training has happened with an Indian guru. And that was part of this movement around cultural AI in our lore.
Sure.
So the idea is also to kind of speak about the continuity of Indian heritage and show that it can continue even into cyborgs and even into artificial intelligence and post AI as well. And that's kind of the hidden message in the show itself.
We've been talking about evil AIs today here at the ACMI, and it occurs to me that what they're doing wrong is that they're not getting gurus to train them.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm curious about you said you use generative AI for some elements of the performance. Sort of how did you approach that, and did you set yourself any boundaries, and how did you interact with that kind of element?
Right. So just to give you a little background in general to us, so Murthy and me are both essentially from the Indian electronic dance music scene. Murthy's been producing and DJing for like 25 years. I've been working like 20 years. And so in some sense, we're also therefore media artists who work with tech quite a lot. So working with generative AI came quite naturally for us as one of the ways in which you would advance your practice. And very early on when we started this project, it coincided with the start of generative AI in some sense 3 years back when Midjourney and everything came along. Yeah. And it was pretty obvious to us immediately that a framing around AI for cultural good would be important for us to have as artists, and it would be important for our story as well. So that kind of was just some background. And in terms of how we work with it, I think both of us have different approaches. I would say I'm a bit more into that world in terms of letting go of my previous world to kind of explore that. Murthy is very much also invested in real like session recordings with traditional musicians, and he's more of an ethnomusicologist. So his approach to it is a bit more measured, but I think we both complement each other through that. But also it's just early days, and like we all know, there are obviously many ethical dilemmas around it. There are many, many layers that one has to unpack through time, and it can't be, sped up, sorry. But one important aspect is also that there is, in some sense, a decolonial aspect to the practice of AI when it's done in the global south. And for practitioners like Murthy and me, I think it's very important to also recognize that and acknowledge that there are aspects of where you practice AI on the globe that can impact how you think about it, and should also actually impact the ethical frameworks around technologies like this.
Yeah, yeah. Murthy, with electronic music, it always seems to be the music of the future, even though it was laid down in the 1920s, so 100 years ago, and yet here we are through Forbidden Planet soundtrack and Doctor Who and Vangelis and everybody who's used electronic music, but it still keeps being the music of the future. Why is that?
I think that's the beauty of electronic music, and it's also one of the reasons I sort of, coming from a sit-down classical traditional background, embraced it, because it's such a free-form expression. There is a lot more, less of constriction, I would say, and it is easy for individual expression. Everybody can use the same piece of machine and come up with different ideas. I mean, if you look at it, a lot of dance music is still made on a bunch of like Roland machines and a couple of like synthesizers which are famous, and people still use it either in a real analog form or go back to looking at emulations, which a lot of companies put out as VSTs. So I think the synthesizer world gives you a lot of freedom to express yourselves, which I think in traditional boundaries, we have something known as manodharmam in our sit-down concerto style, where there is a scope for that, but otherwise everything is pretty pre-directed and everything has set boundaries to sort of keep it in a classical sort of world. So I guess that's why electronic music keeps evolving, and we see there's like multifolds of that, and our practice is also an multimedia practice where there is music, visuals, dance, and amalgamation of so many different practices. And just to sort of have your personal take on, I mean, everybody can't be a filmmaker, musician, dancer, and so many things. And I think it's our fantasy to be in all these creative art forms. Growing up with these around us sort of brings us into this natural world of an amalgamation of things to just communicate and storytell.
Great. I love that about electronic music, especially when you're working with a synthesizer or a theremin and digitising it all, that you can take, how do I put this? Normally you're playing say you're playing a real piano and you're playing one or two notes. Each note is a note in itself. But when you invest in the digital realm, you can actually take a whole phrase and use that as kind of a super note. So you can go, this phrase here is a note and this one is a note. So with your performance tonight, is it the full show? Because I know you had a version at the Adelaide Fringe and obviously elsewhere. Is there any extra elements that you've introduced? Because you're at ACMI, because I know you're pulling out elements from venues where you go from museums and so on.
It's actually a show that changes all the time. So what we performed in Adelaide like maybe 2 years back, it's a totally different show from then.
Okay.
And primarily because, one is just the growth of generative AI. I mean, for me, at least as a visual person, there's just so much happening that it's impossible to literally, because what you did even 6 months back looks like crap. So, and I think being an actor, there was definitely a lot of pressure to make a few things more cinematic and kind of complement the big room cinema experience that we're in. So that definitely was pressure for me, for sure, from a visual point of view. And we also tried to actually add a lot more voiceovers and try to bring in a few cinematic elements, which I think is our effort to meet ACMI midway from a club.
Well, thank you very much for coming
Thank you.
in today. And as I said, you can get tickets for the Elsewhere in India performance tonight at 8 p.m. On the ACMI website. And yeah, thank you very much for coming in today.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for talking to us.
Okay, so we're going to go with a track next, which is included in the exhibition itself, and it's Björk's The Gate, and you can go into the exhibition and see everything in there, from the costumes, from the production sketches, through to the full music video.
You are listening to Triple R, a very special live broadcast from down in the ground floor ACMI foyer, right near the gift shop. If you are hearing our dulcet tones out in the building of ACMI or the surrounds, feel free to pop on down and check out our live broadcast. We're set up, like I said, right near the gift shop. You can't miss us. Thank you so much to everyone who's been hanging around listening to the live broadcast to date. We've had some amazing chats with some great guests. And that track just there was...
That was The Gate from Björk's Utopia album. And it's a very... I hesitate to say touchy-feely, but I'll go with it anyway, because I've seen the costume downstairs with all of its iridescence.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all about community and love and pain. A little bit of pain.
A little, always.
Yeah, so we're here at the ACMI, the exhibition that we've been talking about for the last 2 hours, more or less. Future and Other Fictions. It is a science fiction orientated exhibition, and also not at the same time.
Yeah, it goes beyond. It's
Beyond with Björk.
Exactly. It's very much, I think, about understanding what kind of future we want to make for ourselves. And it's a bit of a call to action. And what I specifically liked, again, was at the end of the exhibition, there's a range of quotes and other materials that you can look at as well, like books and so on, to just kind of keep you engaged with the ideas that have been brought up during the exhibition, even after you've left the ACMI building. So we've gone through a little bit already about some of the activations that are available, like the text-based online game adventure. Also, when you're down here, you can make your own poster. And not to mention all of the physical items and creative sketches and ideations, and really getting into the minds of some of these future creators that you can see as part of the Future and Other Fictions, which is showing at ACMI up until April the 27th. Triple R subscribers do get a discount on tickets as well.
I had a lot of fun looking at elements in there. We skated past some of the more traditional science fiction elements in there. The cave of posters at the start. And I'm looking at all these movie and TV posters and thinking, seen that one. Have that one.
Have you seen, was there any you hadn't seen?
Yeah, there was actually one or two that I hadn't actually seen. And I thought it might be some obscure anime ones, but that was not the case. There was a few European ones that I hadn't seen.
Homework for you, Rob.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, and then we moved on through that exhibition, and there's about, 7 or 8 commission pieces of short films. And that was fascinating too, because I'm wandering through it, and I had a look at that. I'll sit down for 8 minutes, 9 minutes and watch this short film. And then that would magically riff off items that were around it.
Yeah.
It's very clever to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it sort of you go in, it's the big funnel of science fiction and what we know, and then you really it moves you through kind of the world building, how these worlds are created, then it moves to like the inhabitants, so things like the costuming and the gadgets and so on, and then I think it moves further for you to start thinking about different kinds of futures, and that's where it incorporates elements of Afrofuturism and things like that.
I was looking at the artefacts from the creator, some of the pre-production artwork in that. That's Gareth Edwards' film. And he's, famous for shooting from the hip, basically going out and making science fiction films. Not obviously Godzilla or any of his Star Wars films, Rogue One, but taking elements from the background of reality. So he'll go to Southeast Asia or India and shoot plates there, bring them back and then totally alter them, like somebody going to an op shop and finding someone else's, naive acrylic painting of a landscape, and then you just put a giant robot in it or a spaceship.
Yeah.
And there's some good elements in there. I was talking about the prop that Weta Workshop did for it too, and it's just a lovely little piece that you look at, and you can see the little chips that go into it to program it for missions.
Yeah.
And it can translate for you, all those sorts of things that you can actually do with your little phone. A lot smaller than that, but you know, it was actually the design aesthetic for the creator was to do a kind of a retro futurism. So it's as if it's like the 80s and 90s looking back towards there.
Yeah, retrofuturism I think is a big one that we're seeing a bit more of lately on screen as well. I would consider, I guess, the new Fantastic Four is going to be a retrofuturism.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's becoming one of the popular depictions because I guess the retro part, you can think of it as being somewhat idyllic, and I think we need that escape during these times. I think that's part of what the appeal of your more shiny retrofuturism.
Yes, well, you know, Kurt Russell's next film, Escape from America, will be one to see. But there are so many elements in it that are First Nations international. For example, there's an entire piece that's set in Lagos in Nigeria, which has actually been a thing at the moment. There's a Disney Plus animated series about that too. And it just seems to be the place to go if you're going to talk about futurism. And in terms of that, they've got photographs where they've worked up, well, sketches and graphic designs, worked up where you've got people doing routine things, walking around, going to market, delivering food and so on. But they've sort of cyberpunked them up.
Yeah.
And that's really cool too. I like that. And there's a lot of gaming elements in the exhibition too.
Yeah, there's a bit of a focus on CD Projekt Red's game Cyberpunk 2077. There's also works from Umurangi Generation, and it examines some of the smaller different video games as well, because obviously CD Projekt Red is a big AAA studio. I think that gaming and interacting with gaming future worlds is kind of a big theme that I find pretty interesting myself, and how, because it really puts you, as we were talking earlier with Adrian Hon about immersion, I think that's a really great way to actually start thinking about the future that you want to be in when you're experiencing these different kinds of imagined futures in an online gaming or gaming context. It's like, oh, do I really want to be slogging around in an exoskeleton delivering packages until my dying day in some, wasteland?
I say yes. Not for you, but for me. That is my thing.
And I think it's that interactivity which makes gaming such an important element, an important screen when we're talking about all the different screens that we're looking at as part of Imagined Futures.
It's just one of my favourite pieces is a costume. Pacific Islands, I think, is the origin of it. And they've made the train... It's like a sort of a cloak. They made the train out of videotape.
Those costuming, those outfits were amazing. I think the detail and just the different objects and found objects that we used, there's a really great explanation as well. I would say too, and this is such a minor point, but I think all of the exhibition artifacts in terms of the descriptions and the little notes and the placards were really well done. It really gave you the extra information that you needed to get more out of what you were looking at, but you could also go through and just enjoy it visually as well. And I thought that was really interesting. I really like a well-curated piece, a summary on the side of any given exhibit piece.
Sometimes I'm going through an exhibition and being a maker, I like to see how things are done. And I'm not just talking about the production process that they're showing for the audio-visual pieces, sketches to props and costumes through to the finished video. I'm stopping to look at how the exhibition is mounted.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet you're looking at the lighting all of that. But it's fascinating, and I think we don't put enough thought into all the work that would take to get all these things in a space together and put, and I mean, that's obviously Amanda and Liam's job to curate this experience, but yeah, just so many different things about what it's going to look like. And they just
beamed it all down there. It was easy.
Wouldn't that be easy?
Yeah. But, things like the cyberpunk section, they've used industrial scaffolding to mount it on.
Yeah,
and it's just a nice little touch.
I do think the lighting plays a part of it too. I mean, there's certain parts that are more well lit and certain parts that are deliberately more murky, more shadowed.
Well, it's funny you should say that. One of the bits that really impressed me, and it's absolutely just me, they've got the Björk costume there, and it throws light onto a screen behind it. So it's actually kind of giving you the effect of filming it.
Yeah.
Little shadows that you can see.
I can guarantee everything's so well thought out. I would call out as well, in addition to the exhibition itself, there is a range of talks that are happening tomorrow as well. So tomorrow at 11:30 we have the talk Me, Myself and AI, and that's going to talk about the intersection of humanity and artificial intelligence. We also have Cyberpunk Dreams, which is on at 1:30 tomorrow, and that's going to examine cyberpunk future worlds. You'll actually hear and see me again at that one, emceeing that with... to talk all things cyberpunk. And then after that, we also have Björk The Clips. Tim Scheel will be talking through Björk's music videos, music video work. That one is at 3:30. So they've got those 3 talks happening as well tomorrow, sort of part of this Future and Beyond mini festival that they're having at ACMI this weekend to celebrate all things futurism. In addition to, obviously, we're speaking earlier with Avinash and Murthy and their performance elsewhere in India, which is happening tonight at 8 p.m. at the ACMI.
So we're coming up to the end of our special live broadcast.
No, I feel like it's really gone whipped by.
As Captain Kirk once said, I miss my old chair. So, all right, so obviously we'll be on Zero G on Monday.
Yes, 1 p.m. Our usual slot.
And you can listen in either live or audio on demand, which has the music, or the podcast, which we're still running at the moment, which doesn't have the music for copyright reasons.
Just the yapping.
And thank you to the Triple R Live to Air crew down here, keeping us on air. And all of the Triple R staff who've helped make this possible, including, Tim, Carl, Beck, Ben, Lou, everybody. And thank you to ACMI for having us here as well. And of course to our guests as well, Seb and Amanda and everybody, Adrian, and this is such a long list. We don't normally do more than 2 interviews at once on the show.
Rob's energy cells are winding down.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much to all of our guests, Seb, Amanda, Adrian, Avinash and Murthy. Right. And remember that you can head to the Future and Other Fictions exhibit. It's now on at ACMI up until April 27th. You can get tickets on acmi.net.au or here in person. You can also view exhibition details and see the information on the other talks and events that I mentioned before. There's also some great resources that you can get through going to the website that'll be on your ticket. You have a special lens code, so there's more interactive things and some cool nifty bits on there as well. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, I will be hosting the Cyberpunk Dreams panel, which is on here at ACMI at 1:30. Tomorrow there will also be Triple R DJs playing at ACMI. As I mentioned, we've got Yasmin Sharif from Cease and Desist and Anthony Carew from the International Pop Underground. And coming up after this special ACMI live broadcast, we do have Twang. Last round of applause for everybody here who put all the effort in to make this possible.
And especially to the Triple R Zero G audience who showed up today too. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Megan.